in Facebook, but that's for sure we do. Definitely, even with or without blended learning, we're still interacting in Facebook. So if you include those variables in, of course, you will see that with blended learning, with or without blended learning, that wouldn't make much of a difference. But if you assume, if you're singling out those variables, you will see that logically, the conclusion that follow is that blended learning would definitely reduce the chance of having a face-to-face interaction and a more intimate relationship between students and teacher. At least that's
Do you
the flow. Yeah.
do you think the two things, the reduced closeness in the physical class and more social media interaction, equal itself out, or do you think there's one more that rising or one more that declining more than the other?
Can I have the question again?
Uh, like you said, there's a reduce in closeness in like a face-to-face or physical classroom, but there's a bit more social media interaction between teachers and students. Do you think the two things one thing that is more than the other? Do
I
you
think
get the question? Yeah.
I kind of get the question. Well, ultimately, you wanna ask whether I think they would offset each other, like
Yes.
these online sessions. I think it's hard to really try to quantify or try to make an evaluation on such. But personally, I do think that they will be pretty much be able to offset one another and things like that. That's why when I answered the question earlier, I said that assuming the interaction between teacher and student on unofficial platform um, does not exist, then blended learning would reduce the relationship. But if you consider factoring in the teacher and students interaction on social medias, various social media platform, then I think the matter would not make much of a difference. The reason why I'm saying this because I observe a different trends in teachers. You have if you do profiling on teachers that are teaching WS at least only for WS subject, you will see that they're quite a big, I mean, they're quite a diverse group of people. You have teachers who are, starting at the top with a lot of seniority. You have, so they are not open to engaging with students on such social media at all. In fact, I think they are not using social media much. So you have that the first group on the senior side of the lecturer who reject having interaction with student on social media, and then you have the second group who are just so if students text to them, they will be responding, they'll be happy to responding, but there isn't much engagement and things like that. So they're responsive, but it's just that they're not using or expressing such on social media. On the other side, you have a very active group of teachers who will engage on social medias with students by through various actions such as commenting, liking, sharing each other post or photo and things like that. So you have this three group of people. If you consider the active group and the group that is in the middle, with or without blended learning, the relationship will be pretty much the same. But if you consider the senior group that we talked about at the beginning, those who are not open at all to interacting with students via social media and other platform, unless it's Google Classroom, then you will see that the relationship is different. So as we are answering this question, I think we need to really group people or profile people into different groups in order to have an answer that fits for different contexts.
So in the closing thought about classroom activity, can you list some of advantage and disadvantage of blended learning environment in your personal opinion?
Advantages and disadvantages.
Yes.
Oh, I think we've discussed that throughout uh, as we discussed earlier as well. I think one of the main advantages for blended learning is the ease at which it allows the students to work from their home or in their personal space and things like that. And in a sense, it also allowed for better document storage and in an online document storage as well. Thirdly, it also introduced students to technologies that they're supposed to be aware of, then they need to know in their class, and teacher are open to giving more work or tasks that students that are deemed to be beneficial for students learning in that sense. On top of that, I do also think that blended learning itself is a way to really integrate or introduce or challenge the real-time physical environment classroom as well, because ultimately we want to be able to introduce distant learning in a way, at least in our department, that is part of our vision in the future. We wanted to be able to introduce distant learning to students. So blended learning is, to me at least, would be a step closer to further distant learning. Although I know that they have quite different and their characteristics are also very different, but I do consider it could be a milestone in helping students and teacher in the future. For disadvantages, as we discussed earlier, I do think that familiarity with technology really works a lot. Some students are more familiar with technology and more comfortable than technology than the other. So that is one thing. Number two, when I was teaching, there was quite a concern, in fact, in terms of whether students have access to technological devices. So that has become a problem in which, at least in our institution, we were not able to address fully yet, because just a side story a bit, back then there was the students who do not have the laptop or the computer and anything like that, and ideally the school was supposed to have a computer lab in which the student can work on and come to do their tasks if they don't have a computer at home. But that would really defeat the purpose of having the blended learning itself, right? Because we want to have this blended learning so student can work from the distance on their comfortable environment and things like that, but then the students are still forced to come to school to use the computer lab and things like that, so it defeats the original purpose. And plus, secondly, we don't even have a computer lab for that students. So so that's the problem you see there. So that's the second problem, I think. But that was, I think, at least in my class, I taught how many class? I think only 2 WS class I had, and combining those 2 class, I have less than 40 students. So among the 40 students that I taught, there were 2 who do not have access to the technologies. And I'm not sure about other class because I could not speak for other lecturers. So I think that was the second downside of blended learning itself. And others, I think, not pretty. Oh, I do think the thirdly is on teacher side. I do think that teacher need to bring their A game to blended learning, especially those who are not familiar with technology or with the online teaching methodology in the case of blended learning. And I see this because back in when I started teaching blended learning, it was only, I think, it was the second year of introducing blended learning. So we had quite a struggle. This year, I think, is the third year or fourth year. I'm not particularly sure. You can trace that back with the program coordinator if you want. So I think it's getting a bit better. It's being getting more systematic and so on. So it's getting a bit better. But at least in the year in which I started teaching blended class, that was quite teacher training on blended teaching was quite a challenge, was quite a struggle. So I think that's pretty much it.
So, so since we are in a Zoom call that is nearly ending, can I end this meeting and call you back in like 2 minutes?
Oh, okay. See you.
See you in 2 minutes. Thank you, lecturer.